What if Shiki and Scopper Gaban are brothers? This is brought to you by a member of my Discord, the Digital Burrow, Mr. Bushido. And as I look into it, it's really weird how similar the two end up being, because both of them end up wearing a striped kimono, which is weird because, of course, Scopper Gaban at this point has no ties to Wano. Scopper Gaban is also introduced wearing a casa hat, which is something only indicative of Wano. Of course, you know, Shiki is really known for wearing a striped kimono, and that's what his appearance was in the 10th One Piece movie, One Piece Film Strong World. What's also really weird is that both of their names in one way or another do relate to a precious metal. Scopper is copper or bronze, and then Shiki's epithet is the golden lion, so we have a gold parallel there. Very odd, very interesting. But also what's very curious is that before his weird anger mutation or whatever, Scopper, Gaban, and Denjiro look just alike. Both had black hair and both wear round glasses, or at least Denjiro did before the anger made his eyesight better. I don't know. But yeah, that's also a strange thing. And we know that Shiki has some ties to Wano because he's always in a kimono, and of course Kurozumi Higurashi turned into him via the use of the clone fruit. So that's also a weird sticking point. Another weird thing that I've noticed with a lot of Wano characters who become pirates is that a lot of them end up being dual wielders. I don't know what that's about. Of course, Odin has his two-sword style, but of course we know all 9 scabbers pay homage to Odin, as all of them are users of his brand of two-sword style. But we know too that Whitebeard pirate Izo is also a dual weapons user, as he is a dual gunslinger of 2 twin pistols. So that too is quite interesting. But in talking about Whitebeard, we have to talk about his former comrade Shiki, as he is a user of the two-sword style as well, because he has 2 named swords, which must mean that there are 2 Meito grade swords in Oto and Kogarashi, whom become his legs after he breaks out of Impel Down. But what's interesting about these 2 swords as well is that he's always had them, as they appear to be on his side in chapter 1154, which is the time in which the Rocks Pirates were just getting started. And presumably from this shot, apparently Shiki is a founding member of the Rocks Pirates. But with that being said, Oto translates into English meaning Cherry 10, which is probably a pun off of Shiki being the main antagonist of One Piece movie 10. And then we have Kogarashi, which means wintry wind. The funny part about that one is that all the locations that Shiki has been associated with so far do have a wintry area. In Elbaf, of which he appears in chapter 1154, he is carrying the 2 swords, and he appears in the underworld, which is wintry. Then, of course, that is in part referenced through the movie Strong World, as Marivel, the place where Strong World takes place, does have a wintry island. But then, of course, we know that Ringo, the same place that is shown in chapter 1154 through Yamato's cover story, is a wintry part of Wano. So all the places that Shiki has been associated with do have wintry areas, so that's just interesting within itself. But of course, that brings us back to Scopper Gaban, as he is a dual axe wielder, which is quite odd within itself. So yeah, you have a lot of people from Wano who are dual weapon users. What's also very interesting about this, and talking about Ringo, former daimyo of Ringo, Shimosuke Ushimaru, is said to be from the West Blue originally, if I'm understanding the text of Yamato's cover story in chapter 1154 correctly, because they're going to his shrine apparently. So that too is weird. So yes, much like Zoro, and presumably much like Scopper Gaban, you do have a lot of people from Wano who were then born in other places around the world. So that's quite interesting within itself. But with that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Waxing.